Excuse me.
What's going on, Mark Vanderwall, the one and only?
What's going on, man? It's been a while. Well, I know we recorded a lot when I was there, so there was a lot that you could put on YouTube, but technically we haven't done one of these in a few weeks.
I think it's been almost a month since we sat down in this format. I mean, you were out here 2 weeks ago, and I can't thank you enough for, co-piloting the Reef studio tour. I felt like that was the best way to present the studio. And yeah, man, 2 hours is still it's still so fast to just zoom by every tank.
That
and
was
then a
fun.
podcast, man. You worked for a day. I want to promise you, next time you come out, I won't force you to do all of that. But
it was a good time.
I needed you there.
Yeah, it was good. I had fun. I mean, it was us geeking out for a whole day. It didn't feel like work to me. So my voice was a little raspy at the end because we'd done so much talking, but that was a good thing.
Yeah, me too. I was so faded by the end of that day that I wanted to make sure to re-listen to that whole recording to make sure it was all kosher.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of anxious listeners who are interested in our thoughts on probably the biggest news of the year.
Yeah.
Bulk Resupplies purchase of Neptune systems. But I feel like there's just a couple things I want to tell you about before we dive into the deep end and try to give a more measured opinion about what's going on.
Okay, let's dive in. I'm good.
I have a blind purple tilefish.
Oh, what happened?
I don't know what happened, but even when you were here, there was the 4 purple tiles.
Yeah.
And from day one, there was this one of the 4 specimens who would let himself just kind of be, sucked up gently by the power filter.
Yeah.
Either at the surface or on the bottom. And when I would feed, he would kind of come out, he could smell it in the water, but he wouldn't eat. And after, I think I've had these fish for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, I finally realized that he's blind. The other 3 eat just fine. They're super good weight. But his eyes are totally fine. And I mean, this is not, I would say it's rare, but it's not unheard of.
Yeah.
And but I have figured out that when I feed, he goes into this one particular corner, and I've started tapping on the glass very gently with the metal tweezers, just what I use to pinch the mice, the frozen mysis shrimp, and he'll go to this one particular corner where the food will end up, and it's so funny, seeing him basically kind of run his mouth along the bottom, waiting to run into pieces of mysis that are on the ground. And so I have to feed a lot of food to that tank so he has enough, because the other 3 purple tiles will just go straight for it. They'll just zoom for it. And it's so amusing watching him eat, because a big chunk of mysis could be 1 millimeter from his mouth to the left or to the right, and he'll just turn the wrong way. I'm like, no, you're almost there. It's weird having the most entertainment from a blind fish. So he's a little skinnier than the others. I think what I'm going to end up doing is putting him maybe in a 5-gallon tank or a 10-gallon tank by himself, and see if I can figure out a way to train him to eat more deliberately, because otherwise he's a beautiful looking specimen.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're already partially there with the training, right? So if he's starting to respond to you tapping the glass, and I wonder how stuff like that always happens, because I know they're notorious jumpers. Maybe he bonked against something a bit too hard, or
if he did, it didn't happen on my end. Because I mean, just the other day we wanted to scrape the tank that they're in and clean it up, and we drained the water in that system by half because we knew what we were in for. And even with the water drained halfway, one of them managed to bonk his head on the glass lid, keeping him in.
Yeah.
And his eye was swollen for about 2 days. No infection, no hemorrhaging or anything. But it since has gone back down. So yeah, those guys are I think they're worse than eels. They're worse than eels. They're worse than jawfish. They're worse than firefish. Worse than wrasses. Just But on the flip side, they are at the surface, kind of spitting water a little bit and like begging for food, and they're like fun little puppy dogs as long as you can keep them in the tank.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, I had 2 fish go missing. It's a bummer because they were like probably my 2 favorite fish, but between going down to Florida and dealing with the family stuff and then coming to Colorado, and then shortly after Colorado, I did that. I went on a backpack fly fish trip in Wyoming, so it was 3 whole weeks where either my wife was taking care of the tank or, I was having a neighbor stop by. But it's funny, you come back and you're like looking at your tank and the first thing you think is like everything looks healthy. There's no algae outbreak. All the corals are thriving. And it was like 3 days later, I was like, hey, wait, my mystery wrasse is gone. And then,
no.
Yeah, I was bummed about that guy. And a rainford eye goby is, well, he's been cryptic, so maybe he's around, but I just haven't seen him. So, bit of a bummer, but, and I mean, everybody did a good job feeding them, so I don't know, hard to say what happened. They may have.
What do you think? Do you think the mystery wrasse might have jumped out while someone was feeding?
I'm worried. Well, I mean, I fully disclosed that I don't think I've got that 4-inch lip of glass, and I had no illusions of that keeping jumpers in the tank wholeheartedly. But I do wonder, while the rest of my family was home, like maybe he jumped and my dog picked him up as a snack or something. Because I looked around the back of the tank and everywhere. I looked in the overflow box, and he's nowhere to be found. So.
Oh, here's a funny kind of gross story. I in college at my spot over in Columbia, South Carolina, I had a Mandarin goby, a dragonette, and one day I noticed that he was missing, and I didn't have any cats, I didn't have any dogs, I didn't have anything that would eat him, and I was just like, I'm bare bottom, so there's not really any place for him to like just get decomposed by the sand or stuck in a power head or not a lot of cleanup crew to just like take him apart. So I was convinced he jumped out. So I looked all over the tank and couldn't find him anywhere. And in that room, I had my African gray, who she shed a very fine layer of dander on a dark hardwood floors. And it was about 2 weeks later, I noticed these little tracks in her dander that were not bird tracks. It was a rat. It was a full-blown rat in my, and not a small one. It was a big one too, man. There's a crazy story of how I found him and caught him. But like it was weeks later, I was able to piece together that the rat probably ate the dried up Mandarin goby. That was crazy. That's a gross story.
No, yeah, rats are. They tore down some old houses near my old house many years ago when I lived in a different house, and I think they unleashed like a rat's nest because all of a sudden everybody had a rat in their attic, right? And so
no,
I can relate, man. They're nasty creatures.
Yeah.
But
I mean, they're just serving a role, just like bristleworms, part of the ecosystem, whether you like it or not.
Spreading the plague, No, I'm just kidding.
So I also got some new fish. Let's see, about a week and a half ago, I got a shipment of Xanthic eyeblie angelfish. And it was so strange because we've seen aberrant color forms of like coral beauties before. I think it's like primarily coral beauties. Once in a while, bicolor would come up aberrant, but I don't think we've ever seen these solid yellow eyeblie angelfish. And something about the Xanthic quality just made their orange stripes like really, really bright. Very pretty fish.
What I'm blown away by was the number of them that were caught. When you first sent me that picture, I thought, is somebody captive breeding these, right? Like Bali or somebody, because what are the odds of acquiring that number of Xanthic species of fish in a, well, even in just one location, right? It's
I think it was a location thing.
Yeah.
I think it would be very similar to how there's like big batches of koi scopus tangs once in a while.
Yeah.
They're found in one spot, but the koi scopus, they change, but their color usually gets kind of more interesting or brighter or just moves from one spot to another. But these eyeblies, there was like a whole spectrum ranging from like normal eyeblies that were just a little bit brighter all the way to the full-blown, just golden yellow, just most striking fish. Really amazing specimen. So I was sent 3 of them by Reef Pro. So one was a normal, which I would call like maybe just a premium ibeleye. So it just looked like an ibeleye with the saturation turned up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then another one that was very odd. He's like really dark on top with like a yellow face and yellow belly and a lot of yellow markings. So he's got more black and more yellow. Really strange. But then I got the solid golden ibeleye, and man, I just knew that those fish were going to change colors. But yeah, the Xanthic golden started darkening up like almost instantly.
Wow.
I've been taking pictures every single day, and it's at first it looked like smoke, like a weird smoky gradient on them. And on him, because the what I call the premium ibeleye didn't change color, the half and half didn't change color, so he's still like the most mutated one. And then the golden, now he's got like this weird, like a gray layer over the golden coloration underneath. So there's the xanthism is still there, and the colors are still some of the colors are still bright, but now the gray sheen over him makes him look a little greenish. So he's nothing like when he came in, but that's to be expected. It's pretty well documented in like the coral beauties that some people get.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to document that over time, especially to see where they end up. Similar to the koi tangs, right? They tend to change over time a bit as well.
Well, that's the flip side of the coin is if it can change color to a darker fish. Maybe some stimulus or some time will enable the fish or encourage the fish to revert back to the golden coloration.
Yeah.
That's the real $10,000 question. That's one of the more interesting things, I think.
Yeah, it'd be cool if there was some type of environmental stimulus that happened in that location at a time where there were a lot of juveniles or something that sort of triggered that. But I have to believe that there's a you got it, buddy.
Yeah. I have to believe that there's a genetic component, right? Because I have the piebald one, and then the norm one's a little bit juiced, but some combination of genetics and environmental factors was either keeping them yellow or making them go yellow.
Yeah,
it's hard to know. It's really hard to know.
Yeah, that's a nice pickup, though. Those are some cool fish.
Hey, I've loved, the candy stripe angelfish since I was a kid because, obviously the peppermint is unobtainium for all but the richest stock traders and brain surgeons or whatnot. And so I always, really enjoyed the subtle beauty of that particular species. And I just happen to have what I call him Normie now because he's normal compared to the others. So I already had one. And so what I call the premium ibeleye is in with the normal one, and it's really interesting to have them all together. But if you look really carefully, man, they got a blue iris, an orange eye ring, a cute little mouth, bright orange pelvic fins, and as they get mature, they have a bright orange pelvic area, and then the degree and the patterning of the orange bars on the side, or they're actually thin stripes, varies a lot by individual. And as they get older, it builds up a little bit towards the top of the head. And if you have a male, he's going to have a little bit longer fins. They're black, and the tail is edged in blue. So there's a lot going on in a small package of a fish. But the normal one that I got was traded into a store because he eats coral. So I got to figure out a way.
I've tried one once just because I was feeling a bit gutsy, and man, was he for me, lemon peels and ibeleyes are just the worst in terms of coral safety with pygmies, which is a shame because, like you, I've always liked them because they have such ornate pattern, right? Like it's not just an all yellow fish or this or that. It's like a very interesting pattern that you can get on. The tiger pige, that was a cool fish too that I remember. I would have, if there were more of them and I could afford them, I would have happily set up a small fish only with live rock for a guy like that. That was a cool looking fish too.
The tiger pige is definitely one of my holy grail fish, and these guys are so close. They're so close to that. But a tiger pyge, its color will mature, but it's not going to revert any particular way. And, to me, the tiger pyge is a fish I've seen a couple times. And they're just so interesting, and they just remind me of looking at some of the original Angelfish books from the late 90s that showed this crazy looking fish that was similar to what we were familiar with, but at once also completely different. And so it's just one of those truly holy grail fish from my childhood.
Yeah, it's up there with mine as well. And it's to me, what I liked about not the $20,000 peppermint angels, but I don't know, $3,000 is not cheap for a fish, but it's the idea that you wouldn't have to set up this 200-gallon system to keep something rare, and keep something cool and unique. I always thought, hey, if you ever fall into some money, that'd be kind of a cool setup. Is you could go with something like that, and if they were available, and you could get away with it in like a 65-gallon tank, and do it up real nice. And so that was the Japanese angelfish book, like some of the example tanks that they had in the back, right? Like where they created these little biotope systems for pygmy angels. That's the one.
I don't just have it. I have it like at arm's length.
I always love those, and like the Japanese filters were always so crazy, like they had like they always had like the big wet dry. They loved their ETS skimmers back in the day. Like they
still do.
Yeah.
They still do. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I always loved how they mixed and matched lots of different spotlights. Before they were LED, they would use compact fluorescence or these like mini metal halides that would just screw into a socket with some kind of specialized bows. But it really allowed them to fine-tune the colors of the tank in a way that we're only now just being able to do with hyper controllable LED spotlights. I'm not trying to plug the A500X, but man, that thing is a different beast. You and I can do that because we have one. We have them.
Yeah. I think you hit it on the head there. Maybe part of my romance with that A500 is it sort of brings me back to those Japanese tanks with the spotlights. Yeah.
I have a whole LED spotlight collection. Some of them I used on my first LED lit tank. It was like a 4-gallon cube. There's it was a Eco Reef 1. So there's 2 videos on YouTube of that thing. That was my first LED lit, Reef tank. And that was also the first tank I ever did without any live rock. That thing was all ceramic. But I still, to this day, have some corals that were in that tank. Very proud of that.
Nice.
Yeah. So speaking of books, I actually went to a coral show this past weekend, the Coral Farmers Market, to offload some corals and just interface with the community. And I brought out some of the RAS books that Reef Builders printed a few years ago. And so many people came up to the booth and like, oh my God, racism, that was my favorite. I just got 3 labooties, or oh man, I'd love to have this for the store. And I selling them at $75 and it let cheaper for what I call industry folks, just so they can have it. And like, we didn't print this book to make money. We just did it because it seemed cool, and Rudy Kiter approached us about it. You know how many copies I sold, bro?
How many?
1.
What?
I sold 1 copy of the definitive reference to most people's favorite group of fishes. It's like the thing about a book, it's like it will never die, and you'll learn some cool stuff. And I'm not harping on anybody in particular, but it is a testament to how people feel they can get pretty much all their information online. I don't have this library here just for fun. Anytime I'm writing about a particular species of fish or corals or crustaceans, or I always pull out a book to have something concrete about where the animal comes from, what depth, male female differences, any fun anecdotes that might come from it that you won't find online.
I always draw an analogy to music, because it used to be like you'd buy a CD because you heard a song that you liked, and then you listen to the CD, and eventually one of the tracks that you always skipped over suddenly over time grows on you and becomes your favorite song, right? Or the albums that are probably my most favorite albums of all time, a lot of them I didn't like when I first bought them, and then I would just continue to just pop them in from time to time and listen to them, and then they grew on me, but because it took longer for me to warm up and like them, it seems like the effect, the resonance of liking them lasts longer, right? It does, like I'm not over it and bored with it. And fish books were a lot like that for me, where you're looking up at your favorite fish and you're scanning past all these other fish, but then over time, as you pass through like certain fish, like you start to draw interest to those fish that you could care less about, and then suddenly those become your favorite fish. And that's sort of lost when you're like just spot treating the information that you're going after, right? You're just saying, I just want to look up this exact fish. There's less of that discovery. And that's a shame. It's the same with music now, like now you just go Spotify and you listen to the artist's one track, and you don't really spend the time to listen to the whole album. And you know what? That song you may hate, you may love like 6 weeks from now, and it'll be your favorite song of all time. So
I've been on Spotify for about 10 years, since before it was tied into Facebook. I remember learning about this music service a long time ago. I pre-signed up for it before it was actually available, and I guess now over 10 years they probably got $1,000. I'm like, man, that's really cheap. But I don't think I've listened to any full albums in a long time. But just to kind of get back to on track with the fish books, I recently got this awesome golden hamlet. There's no information out there on this golden hamlet, right? I have a Caribbean Fish ID guide that tells you a little bit about them. But Scott Michael's books, man, one thing I really still love about them to this day is there's a lot of anecdotes, because Scott, he would have photographed a lot of these fish himself. He would have seen them in the wild. He would have done his research. And there's an awesome, mention in there about the golden hamlet, of how it seems to have a little bit of a concentration in this one particular reef in Nicaragua. And then I was able to go to Google Scholar and type in the species name for the golden hamlet in Nicaragua and just find out all this information about, this fish is wide-ranging in Caribbean, but there's just one spot in Nicaragua where most of the hamlets are goldens. Just absolutely fascinating stuff. So
Scott led the breadcrumb trail there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that people have forgotten about books is, they can lead you to more information that's in the book. And, a real book has a lot of references and literature cited within the article. And there's a big section in the back where, you can do a little bit more homework to find out more about whatever animal you're interested in. So, yeah, it was just not surprising. It was fun to sell a bunch of corals, and I got a bunch of corals, and to see a bunch of folks. But it's just a little frustrating when, $75, ultimate RAS guide, ID, everything. And so many people said RASes were their favorite, and only one guy who said he had been waiting for this opportunity to buy it in person after seeing it online for sale for like $600, because we had a few signed copies in the early days, and I don't know, someone selling a copy for, big money, and he just walked up, plunked it down. He was happy.
But they'll go spend $300 on a tiny frag. So
yeah, the thing about the books is they're not going to die on you. I've had some of these books since I was a kid.
Yeah.
All right. Do you think that's enough of warm up to tackle one of the biggest news stories of the reef aquarium hobby this year?
Sure, but I think you've got the insider knowledge. I'm a little bit more confounded by it and trying to understand it, but keeping an open mind about it as well. So.
Well, that's why we make great co-hosts.
There you go.
If we both have the same point of view, what fun would that be, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take, right? Because you're purely a hobbyist. You've never been in the industry, but you've been around for a long time. What is your gut reaction about it?
I guess I'm still. I mean, I watched the videos and I've read the everything there is about it, and I can see the BRS. I think it's Ryan's his name, right? I can see his point of view of why it made sense from his perspective, and I can also see maybe from I don't know Neptune's financials, right? But any type of investment is probably beneficial on their side. So I can see that synergy, but it's also intuitively just an odd matchup for me. I'm optimistic about it. I have no negative. A lot of people got negative on the forums, and I'm not negative about it because I I don't understand why there's a point to be negative or attack it, right? Because it's really, you got to wait and see where things go with it, right? Like, you got to give people the benefit of the doubt that the intentions are good and everything else. So I don't have anything negative to say. I just don't quite understand it because, I mean, I can go into the things I think are beneficial for it, but I can also tell you the things that I think may be concerning. The one is they're a vendor that reviews products, right? So now they are a vendor that owns a company that makes pumps, that makes a controller, that makes lights. Dosing. So
Auto top off.
how are they going to wade the water of trying to be objective and review other products, right? When they're in the business of probably of having, well, their vested interest is to make the best light, right? To make the best doser. So that part, but I mean, who's to say that they're going to continue that track of being both a retailer and trying to be a source of information, unbiased information about products, right? That was already a tricky water for them to wade anyway. So, curious how that's going to play out. Again, nothing negative. I'm just curious how they're going to deal with that. How does this affect local fish stores and other retailers that sell Neptune, right? I mean, is it going to, maybe it doesn't impact them at all, but it's curious, right? Because now your competitor is the owner of the product that you're trying to sell. So that should be interesting. The pluses I have are Neptune's got more scale, right, for research and development and building products. So maybe they can be faster to market, which would be cool for me because I feel like they're kind of lagging. The innovation could be a little bit better there. And again, I'm not trying to be negative or critical. I just, I'm a Neptune fanboy. I run Neptune products, but I've wanted to see more from them, right? Maybe better interoperability with other manufacturers. Maybe BRS can push that agenda harder, right? Like I know that their ecosystem has become a little, I more locked down, and somebody's going to bring up what was it, IOTA X or whatever. But
all right, let me weigh in on some of the things you've mentioned.
Sure.
And just so for people who are listening who have not been kept abreast of the developments this year, is I think it was later last year or early this year, Bulk Reef Supply, arguably the largest retailer, online retailer of marine aquarium products. They got a significant 8-digit investment, like a huge investment from a venture capital firm called Bertram Capital. And, that made some waves when Reef Builders broke that story. And it was about a month ago, Bulk Reef Supply purchased Marine Depot. And that sent everybody into a tizzy. And before Bulk Reef Supply got their investment, it was very clear that there was quite a cozy relationship between Neptune Systems and Bulk Reef Supply. Nowhere is there more Neptune Systems branding besides the Neptune Systems website than on Bulk Reef Supply. Like the logos for Neptune on the Bulk Reef Supply page before all of this happened were bigger than the Bulk Reef Supply logo. It was interesting. So like there was definitely more than some hints that there was a lot of friendliness going on there. So that's one of the things that makes me chuckle the most right now is these savants who have for 2 weeks or a month have predicted that Bulk Reef Supply was going to acquire Neptune Systems when people who've been really paying attention have noticed this for like a year or two, and then when the Bertram Capital came through, they're like, yeah, that's probably a matter of time. I don't think Neptune Systems was on the market proverbially, but somehow they made it work. And I feel we're as humans, we're programmed to worry before we rejoice. And everybody's talking about the sky is falling. It's not good for the hobby, not good for the industry. But like, if we're being honest, this isn't going to change anything for the consumer. It doesn't change how you keep a reef tank, does it?
No.
Does it change anything at all? You still have to mix your seawater. You still have to manage your chemistry. Your corals don't care about bulk resupply and Neptune systems being under the same roof. So they're like, all right, just tap the brakes. And I just want to remind people, you would remember this, there's actually a bunch of precedents for this kind of consolidation in the aquarium hobby already, right? So I don't know who it was first, but I took a couple notes. But I guess when I was in college, so mid-2000s, Central Garden and Pet is one of the largest distributors of pet products. They bought Coralife.
Oh yeah, I
which was
remember
a
that.
major brand at the time.
Yeah.
Like huge brand. They offered a whole bunch of stuff, lights, pumps, additives, reactor media, protein skimmers, pumps. I mean, they had everything. They bought Kent Marine. That was the biggest, additive supplier at the time. It was a huge deal. They bought All Glass Aquarium, the company that brought us the first, metal lists, unframed glass tanks, and they've since rebranded those to Aqueon. And they also bought Interpet, which is a smaller brand, but I believe that owns that includes like API, so a lot of test kits and medications and different aquarium water conditioners. So that's Central Pet. That's just one. Then there's Spectrum Brands. So Spectrum Brands actually owns, I think, Rayovac batteries and a lot of lifestyle brands and just normal stuff you might find at the grocery store. But they own Tetra. Tetra was and is probably still the biggest manufacturer of fish foods in the world. They bought Marineland. We're talking about, Penguin power heads, Emperor filters, hot Magnum canister filters. I believe Perfecto was part of that. Yep. They bought Instant Ocean, Sea Crystals. That's what it's called, right? The Reef brand, Sea Crystals. Sea Crystals, the Reef brand for Instant Ocean.
Reef Crystals.
Reef Crystals. There we go. Reef Crystals. And they bought Omega Sea. And, guess what? You can still find Kent Marine and All Glass Aquarium products, Aqueon, Coralife, Tetra, Marineland, Instant Ocean. You can still get that stuff, except that now some of it is at the grocery store and a lot of it is at Petco/PetSmart. Those brands were never like trailblazers. Maybe at once upon a time, Coralife was definitely more hobby-centric with some more niche products. But you can still get those brands, and you know what? Even if some of those brands stepped out of the hobbyist consciousness, I guarantee you they're selling more than ever in front of even greater audiences across the world.
Yeah, I was going to say those are much larger companies, right? Much larger brands, if you think about it, like Tetra for sure. Coralife is still, I think, pretty big if you think about it from a consumer pet standpoint.
Yep.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think the sky is falling. I just thought it was an interesting acquisition. I liked what he had to say about, maybe coming out with a cheaper monitoring solution for beginning hobbyists.
The Elmo.
Yeah, I mean, from being the optimist point of view, it's like, yeah, if it reduces failure in beginner to intermediate or low budget hobbyists, if it reduces the loss of livestock, right, which paints a better picture for the hobby. I don't think that we live in an age where everybody's got, smart plugs on their light bulbs and stuff, even if they live in a tiny apartment, so
Yep.
I don't think the monitoring/controller market is really like, extreme hobbyist or the guy who, spends thousands on his tank anymore. I know you're not a big fan of controllers, but I do think that they have a place for people who want them I think about people with nano tanks, right? They don't need a full Apex, right? But something just to let them know, like, hey, there's a leak inside your stand, or hey, your top off is empty, get off your couch and do something about it. Yeah, that's pretty cool to have. And if you can break into that market for $200, that's a good push to Neptune.
I can get on board with Ryan's strong feelings about having monitoring solutions. Totally. But I know what my $5 Chinese, Wi-Fi outlets can do for $5 retail.
Yeah.
Right. And I've parsed out the components, maybe not the R&D for the software side, and you should be able to put together a standalone smart pH monitor, no screen, just Wi-Fi capabilities. Just log it to the cloud. Let me check on my phone for about $20. So that leaves plenty of room with packaging and software development and software and database back-ending to bring something like that to market for like $99. And then you want to upsell me a $50 screen so I can see it all the time. Awesome, dude. $100 smart pH probe monitor with no screen, and then $50 upsell for just the screen, just so I can see it. I would buy 5. I would buy 5 like right freaking now. And you have to have a temperature sensor to have accurate pH, so you would get both of those in one. And then if you wanted to do another one for conductivity and another one for water level sensor, it shouldn't be that expensive. My concern, and what will probably happen is Neptune system side, they'll probably put together something for like $300 that does everything, and it's like, I don't need a $300 standalone monitor for each system with a screen and all these extra bells and whistles. So if they can trim the fat, and this is something I really want to address, and one of the things that has held Neptune systems back in the past is, they're not a small company, but I feel they have felt the need to take the Apple approach to having a walled-in garden. And sure, their wave pump and their skylight and their core pump will work without the Neptune systems controller, but there's a lot of features that you're missing. Dude, I would have a Trident if it worked on its own. The communication radio to make that thing work would be like an extra couple bucks. It would be like an extra couple bucks. There's no reason to force it to work to operate having an Apex controller. Right, it's just a little bit more money to make it work on its own. I'd be all about it. Now, if you wanted to, then giving people the option to say, okay, you can monitor all your stuff with the Trident, but if you want an automatic controller stuff or dosing, then you really need an Apex because that's what controls the doser. I totally get that. So I'm really hoping that with this purchase, Neptune Systems team and the direction that they get from Bulk Reef Supply will give them a lot more breathing room, because they will be less compelled to create these artificial situations where you have to buy into the ecosystem. That's my strong opinions about it. I really hope that's what we see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know it's a two-way street with vendors, right? I know if a vendor chooses to no longer make their light or pump interoperable with Neptune, we can't fault Neptune for that, right? But if they do have this open API or IOTA, whatever, Reef IOTA, IOTA X,
Internet of Things Aquariums, IOTA.
There you go. Okay.
But you're a software guy. You know about open APIs. Tell us what that would take.
Well, and I won't even dive into that, but I mean, eat your own dog food, right? Why not leverage that for some of your own integrations as well? And I don't know I don't want to be critical because I don't know the whole story. I'm not an insider, but I don't like that it has to be like a strategic partnership, right? Just open it up and let vendors take their stabs at it, right? That's how open APIs are, right? Hey, and then let the consumer sign his life away, right? One little box when you log into your Apex, hey, if you choose to have this pump work with Neptune and your tank takes a dump, it's not our fault, right? Legal ULA, whatever, you're if you choose to use our API, you agree, and then you check a little box, and you don't hold them accountable anymore, and then let us all get our hands dirty, right?
I mean, there's so many precedents
sort of my
for this
thing.
already.
Yeah.
So it always becomes sticky when two manufacturers have some degree of interoperability. But one great example, and this might answer some long-standing questions people have had of why Ecotech marine gear, the newer stuff, does not work with the Neptune systems is because in the past their WXM module, I think that's what it's called, right? There's one for Vortec and one for AI. When something didn't work, do you think they call up Neptune systems, or do you think they called up Ecotech Marine? For the vast majority of them would call it a Ecotech Marine because they saw it as an Ecotech Marine problem, even though there was nothing wrong with the product that they were selling. It was more the communication between that wireless chip and the Apex controller ecosystem. So it always gets kind of super sticky.
It does
in that way.
Excuse me.
But on the consumer end of stuff, like people just need to drink a beer. Just drink a beer, relax. Like the fundamentals of keeping a reef tank are fine. There's a ton of precedents. Like when we were growing up, it was That Fish Place.
Yeah,
That Fish Place was the catalog we looked out for. And then Custom Aquatic became huge. Then Premium Aquatic became huge. Then Marine Depot became huge. And now it's Bulk Reef Supply. And we've been through this cycle long enough. But Bulk Reef Supply is not always going to be on top. There's going to be a new angle of doing business, not just online. There's going to be new economies, and there's going to be a new leader for the next generation. Every time these things happen, like the Spectrum acquisitions, like the Central Pet acquisitions, there was no harm to your existing reef tank and ecosystem.
Yeah, and I don't go to a lot of the conferences and stuff like you do, so I don't know Ryan or the rest of the BRS crew personally. But, just on a surface level, watching their videos, they seem like good dudes. And if those are the dudes that now sit around a conference room table with the Neptune guys and bounce ideas, that's not a bad thing. That sounds pretty cool. They're hobbyists. They're passionate.
My concern is it's not a secret recipe that BH Photo Video uses a lot of data to have like the awesomest photography products. It's no secret that Amazon has a ton of data on their customers, and that thing you had in your cart for a couple days, when you hit click and it shows up the next day, that's because Amazon knew for a fact that you were going to order it, and it's already halfway here. And so my concern is all the most amazing products in the aquarium hobby and from Apple and other electronics manufacturers, there were things you didn't know you wanted, right? So if they're guided solely by the data, we're just going to get iterations of the same stuff.
Yeah.
Like putting together a monitor, that's an idea that's like 20 years late. Just a standalone monitor. You have a $300 box. If you have one tank and you want to monitor salinity, temperature, pH, conductivity, that's the same as salinity, a water level, a couple other things. That idea is super old. I could pull out my FAMAs right here from 1993, and the Octopus Aquadyne did that for $800 plus some controllable features, and it will hit you on your pager. I'm going to try to squeeze that into as many sessions of reef therapy as I can. So that idea is not at all revolutionary. But it would be really awesome to see them eat their own dog food with the whole Internet of Things aquariums and open it up to smaller manufacturers. Now, I really don't think the consumers should have anything to worry about.
Yeah.
The one super sticky spot is Bulk Reef Supply now owns a product line. How does that reflect on their conflicts of interest when they're reviewing any product?
Right. And that's
I'm not
that's the
trying to throw
mark.
shade. I'm not trying to throw shade, but Reef Builders is fully independent, and when Bulk Reef Supply makes videos about products that they sell, they don't have any room to inject any criticism. Right? They'll tell you a little bit about the product. They'll tell you kind of the basics and the fundamentals, but they're all sort of infomercials. I'm talking about the single spots, not the one where they really dive in.
Yeah, they kind of admit it, right, in one of their videos, because they'll joke about if they say something bad about a product, their sales team's going to come yell at them, right? Because you just killed us, our ability to sell that product, and so they've always waded that water, and they've done it well, I must add. That tightrope or whatever you want to call it, that knife edge. They've done a good job so far, but they're making it even trickier now because, they own a company that makes pumps and lights and controllers and dosers and
I think
It's,
Ryan really, and we're talking about Ryan Batchelor, one of
and
the
I'm not.
figureheads.
Let me just add. I don't think there's anything insidious in their reviews, right?
No,
Like I don't think they're
no,
angling it. I don't think they would
absolutely not.
purposely say, "Oh, Neptune's better than this, and here's why," because we want to sell more Neptune now. Like they don't seem like those type of people. But in the best of worlds, nobody's objective, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
it's human nature to.
That is so on point. No, there's very little objectivity. We all are going to have some personal preferences, but I only accept products to review that I know I'm going to like already.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not spending a lot of energy spinning my wheels, just dumping on crap that I don't like. That's not fun at all.
Right.
But Bulk Reef Supply has had to navigate, selling products and talking and reviewing them. And now, one of their big pushes, they want to distribute a lot more, to retailers. Like, if I was a retailer, I'm sorry, I would never buy wholesale products from Bulk Reef Supply. I know it would be easier to get everything you needed. Like Champion Lighting was that in the day. Man, I would buy all my normal stuff from Central Pet locally, and then all my Reef kind of boutique stuff from Champion Lighting, all the kinds of stuff that Central Pet didn't carry. And so, but it's, Bulk Reef Supply is your main competitor. So buying from them, Bulk Reef Supply is your main competitor than the guy down the street, like except for livestock, But so now that they own Neptune Systems, do you really want to carry Neptune Systems and then feed them twice? Make them even stronger? That's a You know what I think? Actually, I think there'll be a few stores who really care, and a few others who will just take the convenience, right? I've taken the convenience of buying from Amazon because I would go to store after store after store, not just aquarium stores, for random things, and they all say, "Oh, I can order that for you," and local stores have really dropped the ball of by and large, unless they're really committed to their craft. And I've given up. I just buy from Amazon. I'd much rather buy local, but Amazon will get it to me faster than my local retailers.
Yeah. I'm also curious what the other companies in the controller space are thinking.
Not just the controller space, because Neptune Systems now, we're talking about a controller,
Yeah.
monitor, auto top off, flow pump, return pump, refugium light, automatic fish feeder. Did I mention doser? Now they got a skylight. I must be missing something. The automatic testing machine.
Yeah, they're really
So
not
if
a
you-
controller company anymore. They're an reef aquarium product company,
They have
right?
the
If you think about
first
it.
fleshed out ecosystem of aquarium goods,
Yeah.
minus the glass aquarium. And so, yeah, it's not just a controller, right? If you're Kessel Ecotech Marine, I would just be exasperated, right? Because I'm sure Bulk Reef Supply is one of their largest vendors, and some smaller companies probably make a significant amount of their sales through Bulk Reef Supply, almost like an Amazon for reef aquarium stuff, but they're just not self-listed. How does this affect their relationship with Seache, who makes flow pumps and return pumps? How does this affect their relationship with with the Marine Depot purchase, they also got Aquamax, skimmers and lights and media reactors, right? They have a catalog of all their same brands. I guarantee you we're going to see some, probably the first of them will be some Aquamax lights with just the right chip or the right cable to connect and talk to the Apex. Right? It'd be silly not to. I mean, it's going to be a while before that kind of integration comes out. It might be for future versions, but yeah, it's not just controller companies. But since we're talking about controller, how does GHL feel about having selling to Bulk Reef Supply, which is now the owner of Neptune Systems? Like, how can they get fairly represented on that website?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that room to bring up our third guest on the show here that I've seen visit you from time to time there. But no, yeah, I do have to wonder, like what they're thinking. And again, I don't think that the motives of acquiring Neptune are Like I would like to think there's no master plan to take over the world
That's
everybody's
never how
thinking.
it goes.
Yeah.
Amazon doesn't set up to shut down stores. Walmart's not set up to shut down stores.
Amazon
It's just
owns companies that make Wi-Fi routers. They own companies that make cameras, right? I think they've got the Blink
Ring.
cameras. They own Ring,
Yep.
but they still sell competitor products, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like the first time that weirdness has happened, but it is. It does. I'm sure it does put those manufacturers like CoralView and GHL on notice a bit. Like, okay, that's something we got to think about.
Yeah, there's the consumer side. I think is going to be fine. The retailer side, it's kind of going to be the same. I'm sure it'll be a complicated relationship buying from your main competitor. But I think the stickiest relationship is going to be between the suppliers and Bulk Reef Supply, because it takes no imagination to know already that Bulk Reef Supply has been using their clout and their size to try to get the best deals, to try to get the most inventory, to just shave off as much expense and cost of everything that they acquire. That's natural. Everyone would do that, and if they had the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. That's just a super natural human thing to do. You want to get things for the best price, get more stock than your competitor, get it suited on your competitor, and so. Here's the thing, I don't think any of these manufacturers are surprised, right? Like they got a huge investment. Like, what are you going to do with tens of millions of dollars? You got to do something, and this is not a surprise, but it is like kind of a wake up call. But I don't think it came with Neptune Systems. I think it came with before even the purchase of Marine Depot. And here's the silver lining. I really think some of these companies have been riding the wave, of just success and coronavirus boost to aquarium exposure and the popularity of it and business as usual. But now that Neptune Systems is going to have a lot more resources to do more things quicker, Ecotech Marine, they've put out a lot of products, but they're not even like you can't expect them to put out new stuff once a year, right? Sometimes it might be a few years, like the Vortec MP40. I mean, that hasn't been updated since the Quiet Drive. When was that? 4 or 5 years ago? Not that they need to, but now there's just a healthy amount of competition to maybe wake some of these companies out of their complacency.
Yeah, I think it will. And I also sort of like what you said earlier about sometimes the best products are the ones we couldn't even imagine needing, right? Versus just like, oh, our data points suggest that we should come up with a better this. For companies to develop and put out there things that you haven't even really thought about needing, and suddenly you go, oh, that's pretty cool. And then a month later, you're like, how did I live without this?
Yes.
A company needs to be able to make mistakes, which means they need more money, right? They need to be able to afford mistakes. Apple's R&D budget is insane, right? They could make a total flop.
It's a GDP
product
of like 5 small countries.
Right. If they come out with a product and everyone says it's stupid and they made 1 billion of them, they'd be like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board, but that could be complete and utter failure for another company. So if this lets Neptune get a little more ballsier, about trying new products and putting stuff out there, that would be good news, right? I feel like I felt like Trident was actually pretty cool, so I'll make an exception for that in terms of putting something out there.
It should have been standalone.
But
they didn't have. But they wanted to tie people into the ecosystem up front. It's like forcing somebody to do something instead of enticing them to do something. Like, say, all right, you can use the Trident, you can have all your values reported, but you're not going to be able to manage them automatically in a smart way unless you plug into the Neptune and get the dose. So I definitely prefer the carrot versus the stick, or the upfront marriage versus later on you decide you really love it and then you want to invest more. So those are some of the decisions I'm going to be really hoping to see more in the future, some standalone products, and I know it's, again, supernatural to on their end, on the bulk reef supply and Neptune Systems end, to paint this like it's all unicorn and rainbows and it's going to be so great for everybody. And again, I don't think it's going to be doom and gloom, but it'll be really interesting to see what some of their. I think their first step is going to be one of the most interesting, right? Because they're going to have to do something. I don't know, just powerful, or just something that really makes an impression and gets people excited about things. And I don't think a $300 monitor is going to be that great. You can buy a used Apex for $300 that'll do the exact same thing.
Yeah. They've got to show, I guess, a return on that investment, right? That they've just received. So they've got to show some progress, and I'm sure they've had some products on the back burner that they would love to have done, but maybe.
It was refreshing to have them talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? They were talking about the Trident 2 on the stream to test, I guess, phosphate and nitrate. And I was racking my brain to be like, well, what else would you do?
Yeah.
But then that would also just be the same Trident machine with different reagents in it. It wouldn't really be something totally new. I don't know what the third thing would be to test. Any thoughts besides nitrate and phosphate?
I don't really test anything, so I just look at my corals and go, huh.
And hearing them talk about the EL, because they have the Apex EL, which is a light version, and then it turned into the Elmo for the EL monitor. That's interesting, but man, $300 monitor again. That's just not gonna impress.
I'll tell you where
folks.
I would love for them to spend money, but they won't, because there's no ROI for them, I think, to do it. Maybe in the sense of less warranty claims, but build something robust that's built to be around water, right? USB cables. The way things plug in, the housings, you open these things up, like they're not marine grade, right? Like if you love your Apex, you don't put it right above your sump, right?
Yeah.
You put it in the dry cabinet.
I assume it's got a conformal coating on the PCB at least.
On the what?
On the printed circuit board has the conformal coating to just kind of repel moisture. You didn't look that close?
I mean, I desoldered my broken EB832 and I didn't see any coatings on it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would just like to see it a little more marine grade, I guess, in terms of how they build some of that stuff. But again, there's no ROI. That's just going to make it more expensive on their part, or they have to charge us more. But that's just my own thing, is I would love to see that. But
well, I have a few more thoughts, but I think this is a great time to stimulate our listeners and viewers. If you're watching us on YouTube, tell us. I would love, sincerely, I am not fishing for comments. I would sincerely love to know what people would love to see first. Would you like to see a smart Aquamax protein skimmer with some Neptune Systems interoperability? Do you want something completely different? Do you want a smart heater? Right, BRS made their own heater with Shago and Inkbird, right? So it'd be nice to maybe have a standalone. I want to see standalone products, man. I just want to see standalone products. I don't want. They could make everything fun and smart. That's my point. But I would love to see what people would like to see themselves. Like I have a $50 wireless Tetra automatic fish feeder, right? The wired version from Neptune Systems is $100. The wireless version from Tetra is $50. It's like there's some middle ground right there. So everything that's possible.
Isn't the Neptune one just a rebranded Lifeguard Aquatics? Because I have them both, and I'm like, these look oddly similar.
It's got a cool hopper, system, but it's a 2x premium over
but again,
the original.
it's a USB connection right above the water.
It's just a power. It's just turning it on.
Even
it
if you put some rubber grommets on it, like Kessel does with their USB-C, right? They come with these nice rubber sealable grommets that just seal everything up for you. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
so. With all these concerns about the consolidation of the reef aquarium industry and certain things, I just want to remind everybody, first of all, there's a lot of companies in the aquarium hobby that are independent. There's a lot of vendors, including saltwateraquarium.com, Premium Aquatics, Aqua Cave, that they'll sell you products too. What's another one? Aquarium Specialty, Aquarium Partners. There's a lot of companies you can buy from. If you feel you're buying from the big bag boogeyman, so there's still a lot of selection. But there's also a lot of fun small brands. Small brands that are doing one thing and one thing well. I'm setting up to install my Reef LED light. Man, they have a 185 watt LED about the size of an XR15 Gen 5. And it's $369 for 185 watts. It's got a ton of LEDs. It's got individual lenses. It's got a vapor, cooled heatsink. It's got a built-in color screen for letting you know what the light is doing. It's got a controllable app. These are some of the small upstart American-made companies that you can support as your reaction to this globalization within the American reef aquarium industry. There's a lot of smaller brands out there that are crafting, that are really designing new stuff. There's also a lot of black box Chinese LEDs that are getting a label stuck on them and claiming to be something special. We're not going to shame those, but if it looks like a black box, it is a black box. They just spec'd out the LEDs and told them where to put the fans. It's just there's a lot of other options that you can support.
Yeah, and I don't know. For me personally speaking, it's a hobby, So
yes,
don't choose your hill to die on.
Yes.
Is it really worth getting all activist about? Oh my God, this vendor bought this manufacturer, and to me, it's like it's okay if that's that outrage gets you excited and whatever, and if that's where you get your joy, okay. But at the end of the day, man, there's so much in the world that I'm stressed out about already. This is just a hobby, and I just want to enjoy my Neptune controller. And if Bulk Reef Supply has what I'm looking for and my local fish store doesn't, then I may shop there, and I'll watch the BRS videos knowing in the back of my mind that they're probably not the most objective place to get information, but they're still entertaining guys, right? I'd still have a beer with them. So I don't know. Just, it's I think it's important to remember it's a hobby and don't get too riled up about stuff like that.
That's what I was trying to convey. You said it more eloquently. How you keep a reef tank doesn't change. If you buy Instant Ocean, you're already buying. If you use Instant Ocean, you're already buying from a mega corporation listed on the stock exchange. If you have an all glass aquarium, the brand, or Aqueon Aquarium, you're buying from a stock U.S. stock exchange listed company. If you have a Cyclone or MaxiJets or an Emperor Pro Filter or any of these number of things, you are buying from the previous generations of major merger acquisitions that the aquarium hobby has seen. And guess what? The product still works. Everything's fine.
Yeah. And I'm probably a hypocrite because, obviously we've expressed our outrage about how corals are named and priced at times. So we have our own bones to pick in the hobby as well. And maybe somebody...
That's the hill that I'll die on.
Yeah.
is what words actually mean and what names actually mean. If I don't want to talk bad about anybody, but Steve Tyree was here the other day. He was here on Sunday after the show. Invited him. We had a great time. But I was a little perplexed or kerfuffled when he pointed out my Milka stylo and called it the grape ape stylophora. I'm like, no, sir. No. This coral is the oldest documented stony coral strain. I think it's like neck and neck with the Stuber acro. Right, and he's calling it the grape ape. I'm like, come on, man!
How dare
this is the
you,
Milka
sir?
stylus. This is like 35 years old, collected from the Red Sea. Do your homework, and that's the thing. If you're not keeping up with the scientific names, the actual names, and you're not keeping up with the trade names, then what do we have?
Yeah.
What do we have? No, but it was cool to have Tyree here and just kind of talk about some classic coral strains and show off some of the displays, and he was really enjoying my mangrove tank. It kills me how much work some of the other tanks are. So many more corals, so many more fish going on. And then the mangrove tank, I've got
Everyone
5 colonies
gravitates.
yeah, I've got 5 colonies of larger Montes, and I have, I don't know, 6 mangrove trees popping out. And just the way it's spotlit, and it's just to have this above and below water, everybody goes to that tank like, oh, I made it too good. How do I make my Euphyllia tank shine that hard? How do I make my mixed or my LPS or my acro tank? How do I make those shine that hard? Urgh. But no, it was cool. It was cool talking to him about some classic strains and the early days of the hobby. He had hit the road, so he wasn't here that long, but it was kind of cool just to get a bounce off some stuff off of him. But yeah, coral names really matter. Not gonna go down that road. I think my overarching thought, like I have never gotten this many calls, messages, DMs, emails about anything that's happened in the aquarium hobby ever. And I just told everybody, wait till Reef Therapy. We're going to all get it out there. And there's no reason to cast any kind of judgment until they do something.
Yeah, and
You know?
somebody asked me about it, and I said, okay, well, there's 3 outcomes, right? Specific to the Neptune acquisition, not around this whole, oh, is it a monopoly? Which they're not, they're not even close. But one, they make Neptune better. Okay, that's great. One, Neptune, they keep a hands-off approach, and Neptune stays the same. Okay, that's not bad either. Or they run Neptune in the ground. Right? Okay, well then there's other controllers on the market that will fill that void, right? Like it's a niche, right? In an ecosystem. If the species goes extinct that dominated it, another species will take over that niche in that ecosystem. So there's no end of the world scenario, right? Like it's just interesting to observe, right? Life goes on.
That's the statement of the podcast. There is no end of the world scenario. Just cool your jets.
Yeah.
I have been a detractor of Neptune systems because I don't want to see another plastic box with wires hanging out. Like it's just the same as the Octopus Aquadyne from 30 years ago. Very little has changed, and I hope this gives them, if they have the ability, I hope that gives them the opportunity to stretch their wings and truly innovate, like the Trident. Trident really is in a class of its own, and I just want to see them be able to do more of that and not feel the need to lock any of their users into their walled-in garden. That's what I want to see. But again, there's no reason to. There's no end of the world scenario, but I'm also super excited about this, encouraging some of the other manufacturers to hustle a little bit more.
Yeah, I think
I know Ecotech could build such amazing products. Seachay's got a ton of design chops. Kessel makes some great lights. What if they started dabbling in other things? I hope that we see a little bit more of this.
Yeah, we might see some stuff come that's been stuck in the skunk works, right? And suddenly it's like, all right, let's make a bold decision and put this thing to market. Let's try to gain a foothold, and it'll be interesting. That's the gist of it for me. Is I was a bit confounded by it. I was trying to understand it. But if it really just boils down to the things that Ryan talked about, about how they're just passionate about the product and they want to help make it better, invest money into it, grow it, cool. All right.
I believe everything that Ryan is saying.
Yeah.
He's a sincere dude, but he's not the only dude. There's a lot of people at the round table now, and best laid plans can lead in lots of different directions. And until they make a first move, and honestly, a few moves, there's no indication. Even they don't know. They don't even know where they're going to end up. Right? They have best laid plans. They're super optimistic about the future, but even they don't know how this stuff is going to land and what they're going to be able to achieve. But the Elmo, I'm talking to you, Terrence, and I'm talking to you, Ryan, that is not the solution. They'll just give me a smaller box with just a few, plugs hanging out of it, because the used Apex is the same price.
Well, I don't think it's hard. I don't think it would be hard to build, because you're just deconstructing an Apex, right, into something less. But I do think there's a market for it. I mean, I'll relate to Ryan on this. I had a Reef Keeper, right? It didn't do a whole lot, but I liked
cool
it. Yeah. And if they can build something for $200, I wouldn't be surprised if it sold, especially for people that don't want to program a bunch of crap. They just want to know if there's a damn leak, or the temperature's too high, or the pH went out of whack. That's great. Like, some people are like, I just need you to tell me to get off the couch and go fix it. That's
Yeah. Yeah, just an insurance policy.
Yeah.
An insurance policy.
Sort
that
of like
would be
putting a
fun, but-
webcam in your house when you go on vacation. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it, but the information that you have, at least you can pick up the phone and be like, hey, man, I noticed there's something going on in my house.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I noticed the temperature's too high. Oh, yeah, I went into your neighbor tells you, hey, yeah, it looks like your AC died. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
All right, let me call the AC company. Like, just little things like that could really be beneficial if it's a low cost of entry where you're like, yeah, the benefits of having that information are worth $200 to me. Right, but
yeah. Man, I wish there was Macro this year. So because this is a few months out. This would be a few months out, and it would be in Atlanta.
Yeah,
so we'd
what
get to
the
hang out
hell?
again, and we'd be able to bounce all this stuff off of everyone in the industry and just get everybody's tempered feedback after a
Yeah.
few months of contemplating on it, not just sitting there reacting on a keyboard. So I'm gonna be missing Macna this year. That was definitely. I wish it was happening, and I wish it was happening in Atlanta, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But in the meantime, you nailed it on the head. There is no end of the world scenario. Your Reef tank still operates the same. It's funny because I might be one of the biggest control freaks because I can make everything in the studio dance, but I don't need a controller to do it. The only downside is I have a page of different apps.
Yeah.
But I'm proficient enough now to navigate them faster than if they were all on one app. Frankly, there's some apps that are just so slow or too many nested menus that sometimes it takes a lot longer to access different things within one app than all the devices that I use within different apps, and that is firmly a first world problem.
Now, I will say this, and I will hunt Ryan down if this happens. If I go into my
Oh,
Neptune
boy.
Fusion and there are pop-up ads for BRS in my Neptune Fusion, or a little widget like, hey, looks like you could use a new heater. I'm
Ryan,
coming for you, Ryan.
make it happen on April 1st, just for a day. That'd be so fun.
It's like my wife's Kindle, right? Like she turns it on and it does little ads and stuff.
Well, she must have got one of the cheap ones that was
Yeah.
subsidized with ads. But it'd be so funny if everybody's Fusion app on April 1st said, hey, Mark, looks like you could use a new heater.
little BRS ad pops up on my Fusion.
No, I want it to say Mark on everyone's. Mark Vanderwall.
I'll be like,
you need a
damn
new heater?"
you, Ryan. Anyway.
Cool. On that uplifting note, I think this has been it's been nice to get it out there because so many people have been just blasting me about it. I'm like, all right, we're going to put all our thoughts into one Reef therapy session. Thanks to everyone for listening.
Yes.
If you are listening on your favorite podcatching app, make sure to, what are we supposed to do? Oh, yeah, review us. Review us, let us know how we're doing. And if you have any thoughts about this in general, just take a breath before you make a comment on YouTube, and this should be a very engaging discussion here on Reef Therapy. So,
Agreed.
thanks again for joining me, Mark.
Thank you,
And,
Jake.
We'll do it again very soon.
All right, man. We'll talk soon. See you.
All right, bye, everyone.